So as most of you know who watch this channel, this is a gaming channel, specifically a Call of Duty channel. But more than anything else, I get asked one question, and that question is not what is my favorite weapon, what is my favorite Call of Duty, or anything to do with Call of Duty whatsoever. It's whether or not I can bring back Storytime as a series. Now, if you don't know what Storytime is, this is a series I started probably about 6 or 7 years ago on this channel and stopped maybe 3 years ago. It was a series where I would just tell you stories about my life, things that go on, parties I've been to, crazy things that have happened to me throughout my life, and I tell you the stories. Normally, it's over some Call of Duty gameplay, but today I am not going to do that. Today I'm going to tell a story I've actually told on this channel before. Now, I told this story about 5 years ago on this channel when I hit 20,000 subscribers, and this is probably the most influential thing that's ever happened in my life. It is the craziest thing that's ever happened in my life, and it really made me who I am today. So instead of putting this video over some gameplay or over some Call of Duty like I would normally do, this one is just going to be me talking to you guys, telling you the story of how I almost died. No, this is not clickbait. No, I'm not just doing this for views. The reason why I like telling this story is because it takes something really negative and puts a really positive twist on it. It really changed my life for the better, and it came from something absolutely terrible. So that's why I'm telling you this story, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. As you can see, here is a picture of me in the hospital when this happened. I obviously look a lot younger in the picture, but that's me really doped up on drugs in the hospital, thinking I was going to die. We'll get to that later in the story. Now, I do have a lot of stories, and a lot of stories where I get hurt. For example, what you're seeing on screen here is me breaking my wrist, and that's a whole separate story, but I got lots of stories like this. So if you enjoy story time, and like you said and been asking for the past while, want to see more videos like this one, all you got to do to show me is simply hit that like button. So if you're one of those people who've been asking, be sure to hit that like button. Now, going back to this story. Now, as I mentioned, I uploaded the same story about 5 years ago. So if some details are a little bit different or I tell it a little bit better, it's just because it's been some time. But this happened when I was 17. I was 17, it was the summer of grade 11, and basically my parents had gone away for a weekend. And my parents had to often go away for a weekend with my two best friends' parents. They would all go up to the cottage and kind of leave us to free reign, do whatever we want. Now, at the time, all of us worked a job, so the weekends weren't too crazy, but at night, after we were done working, we'd go back to one of our houses and enjoy some adult beverages, aka alcohol. So in this story, for this story to make sense, there is some underage drinking. I know you shouldn't do it. I don't condone it, but it is part of the story. So at 17, we were having these parties, we were having some drinks, and we weren't getting sloshed or anything like that, but we were having some drinks enough to get pretty drunk. And one night I was outside, we were having some beers, and I tripped over the deck and fell backwards, landed on my ass, and it kind of hurt, but I didn't think anything of it. I just got back up, kept on drinking, and continued on with my weekend. Now, throughout the weekend, pretty much every single night, we'd have a party. I'd go to work the next day. We had a party. I went to work the next day. And on the Sunday, my back began to really hurt, but not like my back, like the way I described it at the time, it was like I had a second asshole that really, really hurt. You know when you fall and bruise your tailbone? It was like that to an extreme extent. Like it hurt to the point where it was tender to sit on a chair. And I'm like, man, I must have really fell the other night because this thing is hurting. But this continued to get worse. Throughout that Sunday night, I was home alone. We weren't having a party because who has a party on Sunday nights? And it just kept getting worse, kept getting worse, kept getting worse. Now, my parents got home the Monday morning. And I remember I had to work early the Monday morning, I believe at 9 a.m. And I got in the shower and I'm like, holy shit. My second asshole is absolutely killing me. Like it is hurting to the point when I go to bend over to pick up the shampoo, it feels like a pole is going to shoot out my spine and through the wall. It hurt that much. But I was like, this has got to just be like something in my back. I must have hurt something when I fell. It's not a big deal. And so I get out of the shower, put on some underwear, and I'm like, man, this is so bad. I got to tell my mom about this. I'm still going to go to work. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a little bit of pain, but I'm going to tell my mom, see what she says. And so I go in, I remember walking into the dining room, and my stepdad and my mom were sitting there, and I'm like, my back, like my tailbone is really, really hurting. So the only way I can explain this is I remember when I told them that I have this really big pain on my tailbone. I remember the feeling, and this is the only way I can describe it, of my head getting really light and feeling my eyes roll back in my head, and then that is the last thing I remember. The next thing I know, I am laying on the ground with my stepdad holding my head up. He actually managed to catch my head before it hit the ground, which is really good. But he caught my head and I was laying there on the ground. I had passed out. And now, as you guys know, I went to school to be a paramedic. Obviously, I'm a YouTuber, but I could go be a paramedic if I wanted to. I have all my certifications. So I kind of know what this response is. It was, generally speaking, when you pass out, it's either a vagal response or you are passing out because your blood pressure dropped. Now, the combination of me being in a lot of pain, just being in a hot shower, getting out of it, and the temperature change probably was my blood pressure and my age and all of the other stuff. That's probably what it was, but it's still weird. A 17-year-old boy should not be passing out and falling to the ground. It just shouldn't be happening. So I wake up on the floor. My mom is running around the living room, into the kitchen, back into the living room, screaming, "I can't find a phone! I can't find a phone! How do I call 911?" This is literally something that came out of my mouth. How do I call 911? You just said it, Mom. Anyway, so she calls 911. Next thing I know, there are firefighters, there are paramedics walking into the bathroom. And as I mentioned before, I am laying on the ground in my boxers. Now, the one thing I will never forget is the two paramedics come in, and one of the paramedics looks like Tila Tequila. Now, if you don't know who Tila Tequila is, she used to be famous for being a hot lesbian, bisexual lady who had a reality TV show. Now she's really crazy and on Twitter. But back then, she was really hot. So this really hot paramedic comes in. I'm laying there in my boxers, and she goes, "Hey, what happened? Do you remember what happened?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I passed out. I'm laying here." She asks me a bunch of questions. What's your age? She takes my blood sugar, takes my blood pressure. From everything I remember, I had a normal blood pressure. She gets me on the ambulance and brings me to the hospital. At this point, it's not really a big deal. My ass hurts a lot. I passed out, and they're guessing that I passed out because of the pain. Now, I've had a lot of pain in my life. I've broken my collarbone, a broken wrist, got 18 stitches on my eye. This was not the worst pain I have ever had. It hurt like hell, not the worst pain. So I didn't think it was that. Like, I was just like it hurts, but it's not that bad. So we get to the hospital, and now I know that there's a protocol. When certain things happen, like if you think you're having a heart attack, they have to do certain tests. If you pass out, they have to do certain tests. Now, one of these tests that they have to do is called an ECG or an EKG, depending on where you are in the world. An electrocardiogram. Now, what this is it basically takes a picture of your heart with electrical impulses and see if anything's wrong with it. If there's anything wrong with the tissue, if there's anything wrong with the electrical impulse, this will generally show you what's going on. And so I remember the doctor, his name was Dr. Indy. I remember because it sounds like Indiana Jones, and he wasn't Indiana Jones. I asked him that. Comes in, takes the... Actually, no, sorry. The nurse comes in, takes the ECG. Dr. Indy comes in, says, "I just need to take a look at the ECG. Should be back in 10 minutes. 20 minutes goes by, 30 minutes goes by, 45 minutes goes by. Still no Dr. Indy. Dr. Indy comes in after about an hour. This is when shit hits the fan. This is when this goes from me drinking on the weekend with friends to me... Well, you'll see. So the doctor comes in and sits on the bed. Now, if you've never had that happen, you probably have pretty good health. If you've ever had that happen in a hospital, you're about to get some really fucked up news. And Dr. Indy was a really good doctor. It's probably like one of 100 doctors who would have caught this. The way he delivered his news, I still don't think was that great. He started with, "There's a problem with your heart." Okay, I get it. You looked at my heart. You saw something bad. And it could potentially kill you. Those were the next words out of his mouth. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, at that point, that's all I heard. That is all I heard. That is, I am potentially going to die. And he said, "You have something called Brugada syndrome. It's a problem with the electrical impulses in your heart, and it can basically just cause your heart to stop at any time randomly. We need to have your heart monitored in case it stops, and we need to constantly be monitoring you for at least the next 24 hours. Okay, fuck, all I got out of that was, "You are dying. You are dying, and the next thing I remember is my mom running out of the room and into the bathroom across the hall. Years later, I found out she was running into the bathroom to throw up because she was so stressed out. It's a response that some people have. My mom had it. I didn't know this that day, of course. My mom was pretending to be really strong for me. But I am all of a sudden thinking I am going to die. And even knowing about this disease now, there's really not a lot of people who have it. There's not a lot of people who know if they have it. And basically, the general thing that happens to people who have this is they don't know about it, and then they randomly die in their sleep. Can that still happen to me? Yes. It's just really unlikely. We'll get into that in a minute. So the next thing that happens is Dr. Indy tells me that I need to go to a cardiac unit, which luckily enough, the city that I live in has a second hospital that is a cardiac unit, and I need to be monitored. So I get sent over by another ambulance to this other hospital where they send me up to the intensive care unit. Now, if you've ever been to a hospital and you've ever been to an intensive care unit, there is not very many young 17-year-olds there. It's a lot of 90, 70-year-old to 100-year-olds who are not in really good shape and probably pretty close to death, or if not, have already died once and been brought back to life. They're in really fucking serious condition. So there's me, this 17-year-old, and a bunch of geriatric patients that can't move. That is the situation that I'm in right now. The one positive to this is, generally speaking, a lot of young nurses like to go into this field because they get to see a lot of crazy shit. So I believe, as I mentioned in my other video, there was one really hot nurse. Beside the point. So we get there, and I want to say, like, my time frame in this is kind of screwed up because, one, I was still in a lot of pain. By the way, pain on my ass still increasing, getting worse and worse and worse. By the time we get to the cardiac unit, it's one of the worst pains I've ever had in my life. We'll get to that in a minute, though. So I get to the hospital. I want to say it's around dinner time that I get to the hospital. And at this point, my mom has called my dad. My mom has called my grandparents. My mom has called my entire family and essentially told them that I'm dying. like, I'm not kidding. Obviously, spoiler alert, I'm not dead. But at the time, the way the doctor said it, it sounded like I was dying or could die at any minute. And like, that was freaky. So I get sent to the intensive care unit. They give me a 12 lead, but they give me a constant 12 lead. So normally when they take you get a 12 lead taken, it's an instantaneous picture of your heart. They get to see it for 1 second or so, and then they can read it and see if there's any dead tissue. I'm on it constantly. So I have like all these wires. I look like RoboCop, and I have to have that constantly on me because they need to see if something is going wrong with my heart at any minute. I have all these wires on me, and the one thing that I remember is it was my grandparents' anniversary. So this was sometime in August because that's when their anniversary is. My grandparents show up with like doggy bags, with their leftovers from dinner. My mom called them in the middle of their anniversary dinner, and they just left and came into the hospital. And I know I've talked about this before on the channel, but this is the hardest part of the story for me to tell. I am really, really close to my grandpa. He is basically my best friend. He is basically my dad. I grew up in his house, and I'm very, very close to my grandpa. And I remember the hardest thing of this entire experience was him showing up at the hospital and telling me that I couldn't die before him. Yep. He's like, I remember him saying, "You can't do this to me. You can't die before me." What do you say to that, man? I don't know. I don't think I said anything to this day. I think I just started crying, to be honest with you. But this is where things start to get better. So as I said, my ass pain is continuing to get worse. It is now nighttime. It is dark out, and my mom and my dad and my stepdad are taking turns in the intensive care unit with me because I can't sleep because of the pain on my ass. I also normally sleep on my stomach. There's all these electrodes all over my stomach, so I'm trying to lay on my stomach because laying on my back hurts my ass, but laying on my stomach, the electrodes hurt my chest. It was just a shitty experience. 3 a.m. comes around, and the cardiologist, one of the head cardiologists at this hospital, shows up at the hospital. When a head cardiologist shows up at a damn hospital at 3 a.m., it is probably for not a good reason. Once again, I think I am dying. The head cardiologist shows up. busts open the curtains around my bed and she goes, Corey. And I go, Doc. And I'm like, is this not really late for you? He's like, yes, it is very late for me. I should not be here right now, but I came here to see you. And I'm like, Jesus, this guy thinks I'm dying too. So he just really, really straight up with me, and starts going, well, like, I'm going to be honest with you. This thing called Brugada syndrome is fairly serious. It causes many people to die, and it's rather random. We don't know a lot about it, and it can kind of kill you at any second. As he's saying this, like, I'm like, holy fuck, this doctor actually thinks I'm dying, like, right now. He goes, okay, well, it's good to see that your heart is still working. The doctor was trying to freak me out to see if he could get my heart rate to elevate. I turn around, my heart rate's like 182, and I'm sitting down, not moving. That means that doctor scared the fucking shit out of me, is what that means. Like, a normal resting heart rate is between 60 and 100 beats per minute. That's a high heart rate. So the doctor freaks me out and then starts asking me a million questions. As any good doctor should do, he's asks me, what are the events that led up to it? Were you drinking that the previous weekend? What is the pain like on your back? He asked to look at it. He then goes, okay, what's on your back is called a pilonidal cyst. It is very, very common. It's basically a giant, giant pimple on your ass that is swollen up and it's probably pressing on nerves in your spine, and that is why it's hurting so much. Okay, that's good. We know what that is. He's like, when a surgeon comes in the morning, hopefully he can drain that for you and relieve some of the pain. We'll get to that story. That's a whole separate story. Then he continues to ask me questions. He says, does your family have any cardiac history? My grandpa had a heart attack when he was like in his early 50s. His dad died of a stroke. My grandma has atrial fibrillation. I have a lot of cardiac history in my family. And so he's like, okay, well, those are some warning signs, but nobody has randomly died in their sleep at a young age, which is the normal symptom for Brugada syndrome. And he's like, that's good. That's stellar. We are in stellar territory right here. Also, with the way I was describing it and waking up right away after I passed out, the symptoms did not match the diagnosis, right? Like, I woke up right away. If I would have had a heart attack, I would not have woke up right away unless my heart got shocked. So, like, the symptoms don't match the diagnosis, but my ECG found that I had Brugada syndrome. So he's like, I'm honestly not really worried about you having Brugada syndrome. I don't think anything's going to come of it, but I need to send you for tests. So he sends me to like the head Brugada doctor for North America. I can't remember his name. I wish I could, to get tests in like 6 months. So I have to live for 6 months not knowing whether my heart can randomly stop in the middle of the night. That's a really, really weird thing to go through. Like, I'm literally living thinking if I, like, when I fall asleep, you might die. You might not. You might not even have this, but you might have this. So anyway, as far as the rest of the story in the hospital, the next day, the doctor starts pumping me full of morphine because this pain on my ass is like up to like 10 out of 10 pain. I can barely move. I can barely sit. I can barely stay still. It just constantly hurts. So he's pumping morphine in me. As I know now, morphine doesn't work on about 10% of people. It doesn't kill pain. It just makes them loop the hell out. I'm one of those people. So I'm complaining about pain not getting any better from morphine because it's not working on me. So they keep giving it to me and I'm just looping the hell out. That is the picture that we saw before. This picture right here, I am in 10 out of 10 pain. I am hooked up to freaking heart monitors out the wazoo. I am about to get surgery. I think I get a surgery a couple hours after that on my ass. And I still don't know whether I'm going to die or not. So the surgeon comes in and says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a drug. I believe they gave me propofol, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember that far, which is basically a drug that you can be awake during, but you forget everything that happened to you during that period of time. I did not personally go to sleep. The doctor gives me propofol or whatever drug he gave me and starts draining this cyst on my ass. And I am talking to the young nurse, not the hot one, another young nurse. And I am just going on about chocolate Cheerios. I'm just like, did you hear? Did you hear? They did it. They made chocolate Cheerios. And they're just like, yeah. I'm like, they took Cheerios, one of the most popular cereals, and made them chocolate. That is brilliant. Apparently, through the entire operation, I talked to the nurse about chocolate Cheerios. So I wake up from this surgery and I'm getting pushed out of the hospital in a wheelchair. And the nurse goes, hey, when you get home, get yourself some chocolate Cheerios. And I turn to my mom like, what the fuck's this nurse talking about? And she's like, you haven't shut up about it since you started getting your operation. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we need some chocolate Cheerios, clearly. So anyway, we get home. The cyst is good. I haven't really had any problems with it since. Sometimes they can come back. I haven't really had that. But there was still this issue of my heart. There was still this issue that I have Brugada syndrome and I need to go get it tested. So 6 months goes by and I get sent down to the head cardiologist for Brugada syndrome, and he gives me a bunch of tests. The first test he gives me is just a resting heart rate ECG to get my base heart line. He did these really weird breathing techniques, which I'm still not 100% sure why he did. From what I understand is you can have an abnormal heart rhythm based off of whether whether you've breathed in or not. And maybe he was looking for that, but it's still weird to me. And then the big test. So, another one of the creepiest moments in my life is I'm getting these heart tests done and he says, all right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to give you a hospital bed for the next hour. I'm going to give you a drug that slows down your heart rate and extremely exaggerates the symptoms we know of Brugada syndrome. And if you have the bad version of Brugada syndrome, you're going to have a heart attack. But if you don't, you're going to be okay. If you have the bad version, you have a heart attack, you're going to need to get a pacemaker, and that's what's going to happen. Can you sign this piece of paper that says that if you die, it is not our fault? Come again? Like, that is not a good conversation to have with a doctor. But I'm like, I mean, I need to find out if I have this. I got to figure out what the hell is going on in my life. So I signed the paper. This part I didn't see. My stepdad told me about after. The doctor then, I'm 17 at the, actually, I might have been, no, I was still 17 at this point. I was like 17 and a half. So the doctor needed to get my parents' signature on this. So they bring out the clipboard to my mom, say the same speech that they just said to me. And apparently my mom just loses it. Like, signs the paper and then just is a wreck for the next hour because she doesn't get to see me. She doesn't know what's going on behind there. I might be having a heart attack. I might be dying, and she can't do anything about it. So apparently she was freaking out for the entire hour. I was fine. I get to sit there with my own personal nurse, it was actually a guy, it was a nurse, talk to him for an hour about this drug, about all these things, and I didn't have a heart attack. I didn't need to get a pacemaker, and I didn't have the bad version of Brugada syndrome. So as I find out after this, they do a couple more tests, but as I find out after this, when you don't have the bad version of Brugada syndrome, it will almost never, ever cause symptoms. It may show up on an ECG or an EKG, but it will almost never have symptoms of it. So I don't need a pacemaker. The only thing is, for the rest of my life, there's a big list of drugs that I cannot take. There is certain things that I have to be aware of. Like if I have a fever for more than 24 hours, I have to go to a hospital because that can cause irregular heart rhythms and cause me to have a heart attack. But other than that, I'm pretty good. Now, how did this change my life and why the hell did I say that? Was that a bunch of bullshit? No. So after this, I'm like, this is great. I can live. I'm not going to have a heart attack in my sleep. I don't have to get a pacemaker. Life is good. All I have to do is when I go get an ECG, let them know that I have Brugada syndrome. That's it. That's all I have to do for the rest of my life. Avoid cocaine, avoid meth. We're going to be okay. We're going to live. My mom, on the other hand, did not look at things that way. She looked at things like her baby boy is fragile, and if he takes drugs by accident, he's going to die. So as a 17-year-old, my mom all of a sudden decided she didn't want me going to parties. She didn't want me sleeping over at friend's house. She didn't want me doing any of this, doing any of that. And I remember biking home with my friend the one night and telling him about this. And he goes, man, like, that really sucks because, like, my favorite quote is, one day life's going to flash before your eyes. Make sure you have something interesting to watch. I'm like, yeah, man, like, I want to do interesting things. My mom is just freaking out about it. So I remember sitting down with my mom one night at dinner after all of this, and she goes, how are you just okay with all of this? How are you just wanting to go out to parties and not worried that you're going to have heart attacks? I'm like, well, first of all, the doctor said, like, as long as I avoid certain drugs that they give you when you have surgeries and cocaine, like I'll be okay. Like I'll live. So that's one. But number two, one day life is going to flash before my eyes and I want something interesting to watch. And she goes, yeah, but like, aren't you worried that like something's going to happen? I'm like, if I live my life worried, I am never going to have any fun. I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to go on roller coasters. I'm never going to go across the world. I'm never going to do anything. So why would I live my life scared when I just almost died? That could happen at any second. So why live your life scared? And from that point forward, my mom was like, yeah, you're right. Go live. I want you to have a good life. And that was like a big life-changing moment for her. Like, I know it was for her. She told me. And for me, because after that point, I kind of just stopped caring what people thought about me. I kind of stopped caring if I'm at a bar and a girl's talking to me and I ask for her number and she says no, I could die. Or I could just get rejected a little bit. Like, who the hell cares about the one thing when the other thing is so big? And honestly, that was, like, it's a terrible thing that happened to me. I literally thought I was going to die for 6 months. I'm okay. Spoiler. But the things I learned from that, the life and the outlook on life that it gave me was 100% worth those scary 6 months. It is 100% made my life better. And if there's one piece of advice I can give you from what I've learned from all of this, is that life is fragile. You could get in a car accident tomorrow. You could have Brugada syndrome and die in your sleep tonight. You could catch smallpox because people don't get vaccinated and die. So why not do all of the, why not ask out that girl that you've been thinking about for the past 6 months? Why not jump out of an airplane and go skydiving? Why not do all of these things that you want to do with the rest of your life? Just do them. And if something bad happens, that's life. That is, I guess, it. I know this was like a really serious video, and I hope I got all my points across. I hope I told the story well, and I hope you enjoy this kind of thing. So, as I said, you guys have asked a lot for me to make story time. So if you enjoy these kind of things, hit that like button and I'll tell you guys some more stories. Also, if you like what you see here, you like me, you like what's going on around here, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I helped you learn something maybe. I hope you enjoyed, and guys, until next time, peace out.